Welcome, No Spinners, to the third edition of No Spin Rodeo. I'm Tommy Joe Lucia, and joining me today is our all-star cast from Piranha Productions, our producer Greg Teagarden, and the illustrious, the bug-squishing, the California warrior, Kendra Santos. Good morning, you guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Tommy.
How is it, Kendra, you're from California? You seem so not California to me.
Well, I live kind of out in the boonies, Tommy Joe. So let's also remember that the generation before me, rodeo was based in California. Grasshopper, are you forgetting this? Like that's where it was all, that's where all the big dogs lived. They lived in Oakdale, California, the original cowboy capital of the world. And yes, the migration has moved to Stephenville, Texas. I get it.
Yeah, Parker County, actually.
One of my kids lives there, but a whole bunch of our heritage comes from California, and there are still beautiful, beautiful areas and agricultural ranching communities in California.
Well, my wing lady, Jamie Brown, lives there, and there is. It's interesting that there are ranches out there, and I want to thank all of those Californians that moved to Texas because they have taken 1 acre and from 6,000 to 26,000, and I'm not sure if that's good, but hey, come from California, bring everything but your political beliefs. Okay. We're getting started here. We're going to start it like we do every day, kicking it off with Kendra and some rodeo news. What do we got, Kendra?
Well, as always, our rodeo news this week is all over the map. Highs, lows, everything in between. I would love to start on a fun, happy note. Seeing breakaway roper Maddie Dearman win Puyallup was really fun. I think most people are like, Maddie who? She's a master's degree student, I believe, at Texas Tech. She's been to 5 rodeos this summer, and 2 of them, she wins Puyallup alongside all the big dogs, and the other little rodeo she won this summer was the NFR Open in Colorado Springs. And so she won 2 of the 5. Not sure how she did at the other 3, but she made a pretty big mark. It was also cool at the NFR Open in Colorado Springs this summer. Her boyfriend, Garrett Jacobs, who spent a little time out here with us this spring during the California run, he won that also. So anyway, graduate student, big stages do not intimidate her. So what Maddie Dearman's, whatever road she chooses, she's someone to contend with. So I thought that was pretty cool. On a sad note, our rodeo family just lost 2 talented young cowboys, team roper Conley Spencer, 14, in Utah, and ranch saddle bronc rider Ski Burks, 26, in Texas. I know it's sort of like when Lane Frost died, there was some comfort for us all to say, and as we could say for Conley and Ski, they left this world doing what they loved. Still, there are a lot of, shattered hearts, their family and their friends. It's just a grief that, how do you even put words on it? So prayers and thoughts and all good wishes to those families. Another tough one, which, any time of the year, this is tough, but rookie steer wrestler, like absolute sensation, rookie steer wrestler from Utah, Cash Robb, he's having knee surgery today, and it's this one's pretty personal for me. That this kid, he blew his knee out at Filer the other day. He was making a very strong push, top 20 for his first NFR as a rookie, and he has surgery today as we record this episode. Cash is a great kid, and I've gotten to know he and his family very well. He dominated the Oatberries Junior Steer Wrestling World Championship Tour. He had 6 years on it, and it's 18 and under. So this is how far back this kid goes with this event. He was also a national high school champion. He's been traveling with Tyler Wagasback. So we send our very best wishes to Cash and his family for a speedy recovery. If you'll remember, Tommy Joe, Cash, as a teenager, won Days of 47, a couple years ago. Like, this kid is is something special. And, he's having reconstructive knee surgery today. It's a setback, but the comeback story will be very fun, and I can hardly wait to write it. So wishing him the best.
Is it like 6 months typically on a knee, 8 months? What is it typically on a reconstruction like that?
That is typical.
It depends on who's doing it. If the right guy's doing it. The big thing is these guys rehab. And the one thing I'll say about the steer wrestlers, they got each other's back and they'll push each other. And rehab is the key for all these guys. It doesn't just come back unless you work your rear off. So I hope he gets back into it. And I think that's just a bump in his road. He's the real deal.
He is the real deal. And Pepper Murray is doing the surgery there in Cash's native Utah. And a lot of people have had a lot of successful outcomes. So we wish him all the best. Maybe the biggest news of all this week, JB Mooney just announced his retirement after about a $7.5 million bull riding career, winningest bull rider of all time. Everybody knows the basic stats, 2-time PBR world champ. He made 15 trips to the PBR world finals, which is not because he wasn't, derailed with a lot of potholes of injuries, but 2021 NFR, since the day I met JB, I have said that he, for me, is an absolute second coming of Tough Hedeman. They don't come any tougher. No one hates losing more. I think I remember when he went to the NFR in 21, and I just happened to walk out of the press room behind him out when he was leaving, and I was leaving at the same time. And I walked out of that tunnel at the Thomas and Mack behind him and his little boy Jagger. And the conversation they had was one for the ages. And I will just say something about F 'em and feed 'em fish heads. And I giggled my whole way out of there. And I thought, you know what? We're going to blink and it's going to be Jagger. And just like we're going to blink and it's going to be Huxton Field instead of Casey Field. And I don't know how many generations I get to be privy to here, but this is good stuff. And I mean, JB, it came up recently where people, when we were talking about Sage Kimsey after breaking his collarbone and having surgery and having to, not be able to get on some bulls. And I know some of the haters and the hecklers who maybe don't like the way JB walks or talks or whatever would say, well, I don't know why Sage can't ride with a broken collarbone because JB's riding with a fractured leg. And I'm not going to bite on, the hating and heckling talk, but, JB did keep riding and played with a ton of pain. And, now he just, lost a disc in his neck and has new rods and plates and screws and everything else holding him together. And he's done. So, there's a big difference between playing with pain and, this is a career-ending injury, and it's a big deal. He's the winningest guy ever.
Yeah. One of the stats that makes him the winningest guy is over 800 qualified rides. If you listen to the greats, they talk about making the whistle. Just make a ride. And JB was after his tenure in the PBR was after I had left the PBR. And I kind of watched him from the sidelines. And I will say he's got a lot of Hedeman mannerisms and approach. I'll agree with that. But 221 round wins and a brand. He knows who he is, and he does a really nice job with it. And then you got his son, which, may be the next Rocker Steiner riding bulls. Who knows? But they give him plenty of piss and vinegar, and that's good because I think it takes that to be successful. So, and if you look at Luke and some of these other guys like that have a winning attitude, they'll win. He'll do. I have 100% confidence that he'll find his next spot in our sport, since it's not on bulls. So good luck, JB, and hope you heal up. So our next segment, Kendra was really excited, and so was I, and Greg. All of us were excited. We launched last podcast. We gave you our feedback for No Spinners, Remember that number is 817-668-2395 if you want to text us, or you can email us at nospinfeedback@gmail.com. We had some responses, and more importantly, they were very thought-provoking responses. We're excited, and as we promised, everybody will remain anonymous. And Kendra, I'm going to let you, there was one that you really liked. I'm going to kick it off to you to respond to one of our no spinners.
Okay, well, like you, I was very impressed and appreciative by how many people, care enough about our sport, to take the time. And there were some very well done, thoughtful, pieces of feedback that I know we both appreciate very much. I would like to first and foremost say that I stand corrected, and I'm so happy to stand corrected on, I mentioned the Houston Grand Champion steer this year bringing $550,000. I said then, and I say again now, is absolutely awesome. But there is, where I stand corrected is the fact that there is a cap, a $20,000 cap in place, and the rest goes to youth scholarships to help, additional kids. And again, absolutely awesome. My original point is never, let's not help kids go to school, because I love helping educate rodeo and ag kids. My point remains, I just like to see the stars of the show get a raise. And I think that bulking up pay on the placings below first place is a great place to start.
Well, we've already had that conversation, and that's fine. I think it's, however, I think we also need to embrace the fact that these great stock shows that populate the winter months were in fact stock shows, right? They were stock shows. And I agree with you. I think that figuring out how to raise the bar for cowboys is a good thing, but I don't think we should, if the stock show's doing well. I mean, here's the deal. You've got kids. It was even in the response, a grandpa goes in and buys a kid's steer. It's just a good model, and it raises a lot of revenue. And so it's good. Education's good. So I still think it's a good thing. Rodeo needs to create rodeo from rodeo revenues. From the 715, we did get a text in. The essence of the text was that nobody ever kind of mentions the stock contractors' accountability as it relates to good quality competition. To quickly cover this, the PBR kind of really made a change, because traditionally the luck of the draw was always much more prevalent, and you'll still have throwback stock contractors today. And some of it is on purpose, and some of it is just the nature of having, 25 horses in your pen or bulls that are evenly matched is impossible as an owner. But these drastic differences used to be the way it was, right, Kendra? You would draw into a pen of horses or bulls, and there was one you knew you weren't going to win on, and there was one you knew you were going to win on. I think that gap has changed a little bit, and a little bit later, I want to come back to this in this next feedback, because I think they tie together. And the next one was from Steve. Steve sent us an email. How can our PRCA judging become more consistent? His note was, when the big guns draw a 36-point horse and mark an 87, and then a rookie draws a better horse and marks a 78. Well, I've seen a lot of comments on social media and stuff, and most of you living room judges don't know what you're talking about. Now, I'm not saying, Steve, that you don't. You may know the difference between a good horse and a bad horse. This judging thing. So the stock contractors are stock contractors, right, Kendra? They're contractors. And because they're contractors, they provide a service, in this case, animals that compete in rodeo. And the quality of the stock contractors really eventually and should be determined by the free market. If you have good stock, you get jobs. If you have even stock, you get jobs. But how can you tell if a stock contractor is doing their job? Well, it's directly related to our first no spinner, and that's the judges, if you really think about it, right? I mean, the contractors are really at the mercy on how their horses and bulls are marked. A lot of these guys, the stock contractors have to deal with judges. And listen, I think that the judging program has gotten better. I do think it's gotten better. The problem is a lot of judges, a lot of them are retired from a specific discipline, and they're very in tune with either that category, like timed events or rough stock, but they may not be as in tune in crossing disciplines like that. And so, for instance, at our rodeo, we tabulate all the judges' scores and livestocks and do averages. I like more judges than less to kind of balance out that perception. And then the second thing, in defense of the judges, is, they're riding an unbroke flag horse from the stock contractor in most cases, or they're limping around with a bad knee trying to chase a bareback horse to see their side. And not excuses. There's better ways to do this so that we get it right. But in our sport, we kind of drag way behind in wanting to advance. The sun shines, and then I'll turn it over to you, Kendra. The sun does shine a little bit on the champs. There's no doubt about it. That's going to happen. They get marked a little bit better. But remember, those champs weren't always champs. They rode through that same scenario, and now they're champs. Goes back to what I've said before. I'll say it again. If you want the sun to shine on you, win. And then all of a sudden you'll get a little more sunlight when they mark you, because I don't think there's a fix for that. What you say, Kendra?
Well, I mean, there's so many points to this little mini conversation, but what you said about the stock contractors being at the mercy of the judges, I'll also say from the contestant's perspective, a dink's a dink. So he's not gonna bring very many points. I will also say huge strides in our industry when it comes to demanding, the talent pool in the stock in rodeo today compared to what it was is similar to the talent pool. The talent pools are deeper on contestants and stock compared to what it used to be. And of course, we're, demanding, stock contractors are bringing in subcontractors, and we're demanding, a more level playing field and more chances to where it's not just, we know the outcome of today's rodeo based on who drew this particular horse or bull or whatever. So that's a good stride. On the judging, of course, my perfect world is we would have enough money to have experts in each event. I understand that's not going to happen, but biggest point I would have on judging is there's no way in real time that someone who used to ride bulls or bucking horses can call a crossfire in real time. He hasn't done it. He doesn't have. It's the same way if someone used to team rope in their prime. Do you really think that guy can see a bull ride in slow motion and decide degree of difficulty? Is that even a fair ask? I don't think so. Judges are human beings. They're not paid enough. And for them to be experts in every event it's impossible.
How do you judge something that you've never done? But you're right, Kendra, a dink is a dink. The question is, what is a dink? And I'll give you an example. If you're setting pins of horses and you set hard to ride, that's the problem, is that often they don't mark the stock equivalent to how hard they were to ride. Because back in the day, a sunfish and Bremer that turned inside out, right, bent his back in two, and you've seen the pictures of the old rodeo pictures where this Bremer bull is blown in the air and shoulders is on him. They won't mark that guy anymore. They only mark a bull that jumps out there and chases his tail to the left, turns around, chases his tail to the right, which is actually an easier bull to ride, really. And so again, a dink is a dink, a horse that runs off, doesn't kick. But the real problem is figuring out how hard was that horse to ride, and do you give him points for being hard to ride or being perfect to ride?
And similar to that, everybody used to say it about the Jim Sharps and the Chris Shivers and the bull riding. Sometimes they made it look too easy. They deducted points from the bull score by making it look so easy. I mean, and the only people that could discern that are people who have ridden bulls at the highest level where it's not a blur and they can see with their own two eyes. I know what that feels like. So that's worth more points. I also would say in this subject, there is absolutely a disconnect that happens a lot between stock contractors / rodeo producers, committees, and contestants. And beware of always trashing a cowboy for turning out if he drew something that is a zero chance.
No, it's a system. I don't think you can point a finger at the stock contractor necessarily, or go try to put 30 horses together that everybody thinks they can win on. You're not going to get it done, Kendra. You can run at the stock contractors all you want. And in that same pen of horses, there's five guys that can win.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. I am not running at stock contractors. I'm simply saying, I hear it so much, with friends on committees of saying, well, that damn so-and-so, he turned out. And it's like, well, if you drew Dink Boy today, you would have turned out too. And I'm not running at stock contractors. It's impossible to have an even pen of bucking horses. Or bulls. It's not
I don't have
possible.
a problem. I don't have a problem with Joe, your cowboy, turning out Dink Boy. The problem is Joe, your cowboy, turns out I can't ride that son of a buck because he knows he's going to get thrown off. Got a problem with that.
I'm with you.
Have a little JB Mooney in you and go get on. Yeah, you're right. But there's so many colors in this spectrum, and there's a lot of variables in our sport. And I agree with you. I agree on all the fronts, but I think that there's two sides to that story a little bit. Greg, throw on the board for point of view judges in the future, because I think we could spend the whole day on this. Let's move on. We got some feedback from John. He sent us an email, and this kind of leads into our point of view in an indirect way. But John's feedback was that he would really like to see the associations have more transparency in their decisions and or information. Example that he gave last year, why were there 16 bull riders? That's a good one. Another one was, Reno, the follow-up on the investigation. That stuff is more fun to kind of follow up on because it's a little gossipy, I think. But to that point, which kind of leads into what Kendra and I are going to talk on point of view today, is that I'm not so convinced that this is a lack of transparency, Kendra, as much as it is a failure to communicate. I think and I'm interested in your thought on this, because I think being deceiving is one thing, and just doing a terrible job communicating is another. And, one of my sources with the PRCA said to me, we do need to do better in providing information in a timely manner, and getting it out there and making sure that there's access to that stuff and you don't have to spend 6 hours finding the information you need. So what do you think? Do you think that in some of these cases they are intentional about what they're telling us, or do you think they're just crappy at getting news out?
Well, I am a strong believer in communication. Obviously, that's what I do for a living. And I have always, when I was in positions to have a large, significant voice at the PRCA or the PBR, I would often say the facts are in our favor. We do best to simply tell the truth. That's how I feel about it. And you'd be surprised, how many times it was like, well, we can't do that. I felt, to just say the Reno example, when you put out a statement and you say, we're investigating the incident in Reno, unless you're going to say, here's what happened, including names, and here's the outcome, why would you say anything at all? So I'm for, this is the facts. That is, and I understand that there are times when that's not possible. Somebody's going to lose their job. I get it. I'm not going to criticize specific people or, specific decisions, but generally speaking, I think governing bodies are best off to say, here's the deal. And I will say also, I think the PBR has done a damn fine job of that.
Is it possible for one of you to just kind of go back over what we're talking about when it comes to the Reno investigation for just some of the people who may not have heard of it or know what's going on there?
Well, Greg, what happened in Reno, here's the facts. Now, it's hard in today's day and age with media to even know to sort out what facts are. But here's the facts. Rocker Steiner was involved in a physical altercation behind the chutes at Reno, and the PRCA was going to do an investigation, and then there was going to be consequences for whoever they found liable in that situation. And that's the facts. I know it's Rocker. I know it's Reno. And at Reno, behind the chutes, I don't know what it's about. I don't have any. Well, no, I've read a bunch, but I don't know that any of it's a fact. So, Kendra, they just need to be a little more forthcoming. Is that what you're saying?
I just feel like putting out a statement that says there was an incident in Reno and we're looking into it. I don't see a lot of value to that. I feel like if you're going to put out a statement, you need to be equipped with the facts, and you need to let people know. Otherwise, why put out the statement?
So that kind of leads into a point of view. Kendra, I'm going to have you frame up for our rodeo fans and maybe the people that are listening to this that are learning a little bit about our sport, our point of view. What's it titled and what's it about?
Well, today we'd decided to talk about basically, should I stay or should I go, as in, or should I go home? And we're talking about the bubble boys, and we're talking about, bubble girls also on the cowgirl side of things. But my standing statement on this topic is that it's 100% individual and situational. We're talking about people the gamut is people, maybe they're in 12th through 15th and trying to hold their spot to make the NFR cut. Maybe they're 35th and are trying to win their way into the top 30, which is going to come in handy as a shirt pocket come Houston. Whether or not you get in, impacts your 2024. For people who don't really understand it, a conversation that I had with a good friend of mine, my contemporary, Larry Branco, the other day. Okay, his son, Stan, is about to make his second NFR. Well, between the first one a few years ago and this one, he made a 2-year plan and goal. And that's because he spent all of last year getting qualified for the big winter rodeos this year to put himself in a position to have a shot, because there's one Cody Ohl in this world who can start out with $0 in Reno and have a legit shot at the finals. So generally speaking, you need to be in the top 30 going into next year to set the table for a good shot at the NFR next year. So it's not as simple as you think. I read something the other day that a very dear family friend, Riley Wakefield, he is a Badlands Circuit champ. He stayed out there in the tie down this year, and he was in that, outside of the top 15, really no chance at making this year's NFR. And he wrote something that was really brilliant the other day. He opened with, now what? Because if you're that guy, what your circumstances are, are you healthy? Are your horses healthy? If you're a rough stock guy, are your aches and everybody plays with pain in our sport. But, if you're a rough stock guy, you have to be, Tandy Freeman, who has operated on more cowboys than anyone in the history of our sport, he used to make these, sit downs with cowboys and decide the tough decision. Is this something where you just have to, suck it up and it's a pain issue? Or is this a jeopardizing your career issue and jeopardizing the quality of the rest of your life issue? These sorts of things. It's like J.B. Mooney. Okay, he kept riding with a broken leg and now he has, a destroyed neck, or whatever. It's like these decisions face these people all the time. But right now, when we're talking about the bubble, we're not just talking about the people in 16th, 17th, 18th place. We're talking about people in the 30s trying to maneuver away. And by the way, most of the people left out there right now, it's a knife fight, because it's the best we have out there fighting for fewer dollars, because a lot of the added money has gone home, to be blunt.
Yeah. Well, so there's really two lines here, trying to keep this a little less muddy, because you're right. It's muddy. Everybody has their own look at things, but let's try to I prefer to kind of look at the data. So you've got a line at 30 there. That's a line that needs to be paying attention to, so you can compete. Those people are invited to the big winter rodeos, by the way, fans. So in order to be, or they're able to enter, and those big winter rodeos really set the tone. Lots of money to be won. So you need to stay in the top 30. What I did was looked at 30th, Kendra, to 15th. Okay. And I'm not going to get into the details of what it takes. I wrote down, I can look at it here. I wrote down, Cole Franks at 30th with 95,000 in the bareback ride, and Bill Tudor at 15th with 51,000. So he's 44,500 out of the NFR at this moment. But and I could go down all of those. But here's what I thought was really interesting in the data: the gap between 30 and 15 in the rough stock. The average money needed was 55,000 to get into 15. But what I thought was really interesting is in the timed events, that gap between 30th and 15th average was 27.6. So I got to thinking, which I do sometimes, well, that's weird, right? You would think it would be a little, that's literally half. You need to win half as much money with the same payouts left to get into which would change whether you're a timey or a roughie, whether you should keep going. And I think that's probably a little bit attuned to there can be a distinct difference between the top 10 or 12 in talent in the rough stock. No, you're shaking your head.
I think it's a numbers game. There are exponentially more timed event contestants who are members of the PRCA than rough stock. So I think that accounts for a lot of it. There are so many. If you have 200 steer wrestlers entered today, you're going to have to be faster to place than if you have 50 rough stock riders. There are more. The talent pool is going to be deeper simply based on the numbers in the timed events. And I'm not saying deeper. I'm not saying they're superior in any way. I'm just saying there are so many more timed event contestants.
Quit being soft. Come on. How about this, Kendra? I'm going to list my reasons to go and then reasons to go home. You either say yes, meaning you agree. If you say no, tell me why. Want to do this? Does that sound fun? All right. Reasons to go. The NFR buys your future.
Yes. And can I add to that?
Well, we figured you would. We just cut it out in the edit.
Reasons to go. I'm going to give one example from each end of the arena. Reasons to go. Okay. The NFR buys your future. Yes. That's where profits are made. We all know that. It's also, I'm going to give two examples. 2005, Scott Snedeker edges Guy Allen by $1.67. Okay, that's why Riley Webb has a commanding lead in the tie down, or Dalton Massey in the steer wrestling, but they're still out there because, the NFR go rounds pay $30,706. The average pays $78,000. Do you know a clean sweep at the NFR, what you can win? $385,807. So the reasons to go is so that you're not Guy Allen losing a gold buckle by $1.67 or 1993. Okay, let me give a rough stock example. Ty Murray beats Daryl Mills by $95 in 1993 for the World Bull Riding title. That's the reason to go. I'm talking about for contenders.
Okay, keeping points and money to stay ahead, I agree with. Okay, but because I don't want to jump into reasons to not go yet. Let me get to my second one. Top 30 in the standings for qualification to winter rodeos. We already said that. That's a reason to go. That should be an easy yes for you.
Yes.
Okay. Piss and vinegar. It's this attitude. Right? Do you maintain this attitude that you're going to keep fighting every time? Future point of view, do I take the rewrite or not? Yes or no? Maintaining, being that character that I'm going till I can't go anymore is a good reason to not go home. Yes or no?
If your credit cards are maxed out and
That's a reason not to go.
that's a reason not to go. Yeah.
Do you think that attitude is a reason to go? Keeping that attitude fiery.
It depends. There are a lot of things it depends on. Are your sponsors demanding that you keep going? Is your family demanding that you keep going? What's the reason you're keeping going? If you're keeping going and spending bad money after good, then you should probably go home.
I bet there's more families saying, come home and get a job sacking groceries at Albertsons. I understand that. So let's get to reasons to go home. Okay. Yes or no? If no, why am I wrong? Extensive credit card debt. You're in debt, right? There's some point where you have to make a businessman's decision that you're never going to crawl out of this $50,000 hole. You better go find something that pays you every time you put in effort. You agree
Go
with that?
home and regroup.
Yeah. Animals and bodies are torn up, right? I think that's a reason to go home, right? And when I say bodies, that's two parts, because you talked about the physical trauma, but there's mental trauma, okay, in any competition and including in rodeo. Guys they're fighting their own heads. They're burnt up. They're tired. They're sick of eating a hot dog in the convenience store. And girls, they're just sick. And they do want to go home and see their family, but they want to win. So, animals and bodies torn up, good reason to go home, right?
If you're fried, your chances of winning are so much less. Go home and regroup.
Agreed.
If you don't want to be there, go home.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I'll go back to a little bit for your reasons to go. So you said they should go because, the NFR pays a lot of money and you need every dollar. However, I think there might be some merit in saying that that's a good reason now to go home, to prep for the Super Bowl. Now the question is prepping for the big game. Is that competing on the field or being at home with your family, resting that burnt mind, resting those horses, tuning them up in a practice arena instead of with judges flagging? Like, what is prepping for the NFR? Because I would say that there's an argument that a smart guy, and I've never been talented enough to do any of this. That's why I'm produce shows. My point is, though, from a practical perspective, maybe they ought to consider, Kinder, going home and freshening up, right? If you know you've got the NFR made, so you got it made. It's pretty damn hard to not go to the NFR, right? No matter where you're coming in at, you could win it. And you're made the 30 for next year. Man, isn't there a little bit of an argument to go home and rest up and get fresh?
Okay, so for one thing, yes, and if it's a matter of, you're a little sore or whatever, there are a couple months, October 1st until December to the NFR, there are a couple months if it's a matter of, just sort of freshening up that way. But point taken, it is a grind out there. And particularly in the timed events, when you don't have a chance to practice or tune up your horse or score some, okay, Speed Williams' daughter, Haley Williams, regular season record breaker this year in the breakaway. She started having a, struggle bus, horse stuff herself, fighting her head. She pulled up and went home and got in the practice pen with her dad for a few days and, quote, freshened up and has come back gangbusters. That was a good move for her. And, some people have those chances to do that.
Her dad is smart.
Because he knew.
He knows how to play the game. He knows how to play the game.
So,
he knew what she needed to do, and she listened.
Yes, but she went home for a matter of a few days and came back, refreshed, renewed, and with some confidence that is all important, as everybody knows.
So I think from point of view, to wrap it up a little bit, now I'm going to wrap up point of view and then do some clarification stuff that kind of goes back to the transparency. And this kind of bleeds into the point of view. So we talked earlier in our podcast about big money rodeos. So why don't you wrap up our point of view?
Well, I'll say this. Okay, when we were kids, Wide World of Sports used to say, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Remember that?
I do.
So here we go. Puyallup was a taste. The Governor's Cup in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at the literal regular season finish line. Guess what? We can say right now, 2 weeks ahead of that there will be some thrilling stories of this person, cowboy, cowgirl, came from nowhere and won a pile and we didn't see this coming. And it's going to be so happy and so exciting. And guess what? For every person that catapults into the NFR cut, somebody is brokenhearted because they've been out there grinding all year and racking up those credit card charges for the hope to get to Vegas where profit margins are made. And they just got dumped out on the last day. Somebody will have been in the top 15 from start to finish. They will get dumped at the finish line. And that also, yes, that is sport. It's tough, but that's part of it when you have the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
You don't win a Super Bowl based on how many points you score all season. You win a Super Bowl on what you do in the last 2 minutes. And so it's interesting. I like it. I like it. I understand what you're saying, that people have put in blood, sweat, and tears, but you can't consider yourself a sport if you award buckles on aggregates.
We agree on this. We agree. I'm not saying to toss all aggregates. I'm not going to go for that. But I'm saying, because that's part of the gamesmanship of the NFR. I do like leaving a tick of tradition in here that when it's works and makes sense. But I'm all for big money, as you know, and these storylines that you can actually take that actually fly in the mainstream media, our sport needs it. So I'm absolutely not against these huge, finish line rodeos. I'm just saying, for every thrilling winner story, there will be some tough ones also.
Well, and I think this will add to, when you get events like this, right, where it matters right now, that helps tune these guys up for the pressure of the NFR and ladies. It does. You need that pressure, right? You can't feel that pressure in the first round at the NFR and expect to succeed, especially as a rookie. You need to feel that pressure. I got to do it now, with the situation now, whatever the obstacles are. So I think that putting these athletes in that pressure situation at Puyallup and the Governor's Cup before the NFR is a good thing. I think that's good. I think that the money's good. And also, if you're one of these success stories where you come in and win a lot of money, that can do a lot, because I believe you win because you believe you can win. I think you have to believe that you can win. Very seldom does anybody win any discipline if they really question whether or not they belong or whether or not they can win that night. And you and I know all of our good friends that are crowned as champions, right? What is that one thing they all have? They believe they're going to win every time. And it pisses them off when they don't. Agree?
Confidence is king. Believing is everything.
Is.
Absolutely.
We have a lot to talk about. We just do. And Kendra and I could sit and talk for about 12, 15 hours. And we will continue to do this. I think both Kendra and I want to tell all of you, thank you for listening to us. Humbly, thank you for listening to us. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time in your day to listening to us. And we want to thank you and encourage you to provide us feedback. What are your thoughts on what we're saying? What's a topic you would like for us to cover? We love it. It's exciting when the inbox dings and it's a feedback. I don't know about you, Kendra, but so the number to text us, and again, all we know is the area code, so don't sweat it. It's 817-668-2395, or shoot us an email at nospinfeedback@gmail.com. I tell you what, another fun episode, Kendra. What are your last words for today?
My last words would just, I couldn't agree more on the feedback, because a rodeo, a sport changing idea might come from New York City, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Oregon. We don't know. But having the open lines, it's like, if you have a better idea than what exists or better idea than us, bring it. Please.
Bring it. Amen. And here's the deal. Progression is because of a marketplace of ideas, right? It's all these ideas is what creates progression, not a lecture hall. We don't need all of you old heads lecturing us on how it was. Well, the way it was 50 years ago may be great, and it may be valid today, but this needs to be a marketplace of ideas. No idea is stupid. So let's hear it. Send it to us on feedback. Kendra, I look forward to catching back up. Greg, thank you for being a part of our team and making us sound good today. And we hope all of you have a blessed day, and we will talk to you in a couple weeks right here on No Spin Rodeo. Be safe.